Welcome back to Objectively Grading, the only show where I'm right even when I'm not. Today is October 4th, 2023, and I really want to talk about spooky things. And what's spookier than Butch Hartman? Am I right, fellas? Also ghosts. Cause he's just a nerd. Danny Phantom was a cool show. I liked it immensely for a very, very long time, and occasionally still go back and watch episodes that I'm fond of to this day. But how do its villains hold up? Because it has a menagerie of them. Like, don't get me wrong, there is a cornucopia of villains, all with quirky disorders, personality traits, things that are just, about them that exist. But does that mean any of them are good? Yes, they are. Spoilers. Duh. But which ones are the best? That's what we're here to find out. Before we begin, let's go ahead and set some of the ground rules, that way we know where we're starting. First, they must be intentionally antagonistic towards Danny, Sam, Tucker, or just the humans of Amity Grove. Amity Grove? Is it Amity Grove? I think it's Amity Grove. They have to be mean intentionally, and I specify intentionally because there are a couple of instances where there are ghosts who are antagonists, but they are not villains. So I think there is a good line to knock off a couple of the stragglers. Second, they must be the main antagonist of at least one episode, or they've got to be a recurring non-background character over the course of at least 3 episodes. This way, we're not going over every single ghost who's ever appeared in the show, because that would be a little ridiculous, especially when you could start considering background characters and ghosts that just, show up, say one line, and bail, and all of the various jobber ghosts that occur throughout the series. Also keep in mind, we are not limiting it to ghosts. I know I keep stating that, but ghosts are just the most common. People are also included. And last rule, we're not counting the alternate future counterparts of these ghosts, and we're not counting anything that's in the extended universe, meaning no comics, no whatever else there is. Live action adaptations, I don't know if there's any of those, but if there are, there shouldn't be. For criteria, we're starting off with design. Design can be anything from their actual physical appearance to the abilities that they possess and how well that they go along with the theme of the ghost. When I look at this ghost, other than the generic ghost powers of flight, intangibility, invisibility, whatever else, other than those, if they have unique powers, do they fit the ghost in question? Most of the time the answer is yes, some of the time the answer is no. We're here for the some of the time, not the most of the time. That sounded like word salad now that I'm thinking back on it, but you get me. Criteria 2. Relevance. When they appear, do they do anything? Like, when they show up, do I go, oh, hey, that's the box ghost? Or do I go, that's a ghost? Yep, sure is. Also, I would like to clarify, with relevance specifically, if a character shows up and is a big deal, but then as the show progresses, they get kind of demoted to just, they're here, oh boy, status. Once they become a jobber, once they become a ghost who they just send to fill in a time slot, they've lost some of their relevance. They are no longer as significant as they were, and the points will reflect that. And lastly, we have personality. For personality, this covers anything from motivations, to mannerisms, to things that they just do. Whenever I see them, what do I expect this ghost to be about? What are their likes? What are their dislikes? If I found them on Tinder, would I swipe on them? For some, definitely. For others, maybe. We'll just have to see when we get there, won't we? Before we begin, please make sure to hit that subscribe button, and thank you everyone who watched my last video. It got like 2,000 views, which may not seem like a lot in the grand scheme of YouTube, but like, it's more than I ever would have thought any of my videos was gonna get. So, thank you. I really do appreciate it, and I'd love if you stuck around to see what else I've got in the future. Got in the future? Is that how that sentence is? That's how we're gonna go with it. The box ghost is arguably one of the, if not the, most iconic ghost from the series outside of Danny. He's not really a character, though. That's the strange thing. The box ghost shows up, he says his line, he talks about boxes, and he bails. Not entirely sure much about him. We can infer a lot from his design. He most likely worked in a stockroom. He might have been a janitor or something, and some boxes probably fell on him. Alternatively, he had this fascination with the boxes before his death, and whenever he died, he imprinted as what he wanted to be. This is all just nonsense, though, because he's just a guy who really likes boxes, and he's dead now, so he's going to continue that. In terms of notable abilities, too, he has complete control over boxes, which in the context of Danny Phantom translates to, like, literal boxes. He's iconic, yes. I don't think anybody is ever going to say that he's not. But in terms of being a good villain, nah. Even early on in the show, he's just introduced as a punching bag for Danny. So, for his design, we're going to give him a 2, because he's a blue guy in some overalls. I can tell you what he looks like, I can remember him clearly, that's why he's getting a 2 instead of a 1, but the design does not stand out. If you were to put him in a lineup of notable cartoon characters, yeah. Relevance is a 7, though, and I give him that not because he's a threat, and not because he's anything that actually matters over the course of the show. And for personality, we're gonna have to give him a 4, because he loves boxes. And that's all I got, that's all I can tell, that's all I know about him, is that he loves these fucking boxes, man. That gives him a total of 13 out of a possible 30. Skulker. Oh my goodness. I loved Skulker when he was first introduced. This bounty hunter who was, hunting rare ghosts, who had a crazy mech suit and a ton of awesome tech. He flew around, he hunted Danny, and then he kept hunting Danny, and then he kept hunting Danny, and then he kept just being there, and then he was invited to, like, Danny's bar mitzvah or something, I don't know. Skulker is overdone, overused, and everybody knows it. He very, very rapidly became a favorite of the writers, I think, because he is in more episodes than he's not, it feels like. I know that's not strictly true, I don't think, but the fact that I'm questioning it really, really shows you exactly how I'm thinking. And I understand why this is the case, because he's a solid ghost design, at least. His personality is good, too. It allows him to just show up in a menagerie of situations. That's the word of the day, apparently. Menagerie. But it allows him to show up in a large variety of situations. But it's also established that Skulker himself, at the point that we're in Season 2 and Season 3, is not much of a threat on his own. So once he loses whatever fancy new hunting gadget or gizmo that he's found, Danny can just beat him. So all they have to do is make him drop the MacGuffin, and they're good. He is also a fairly humorous character, not just in his personality, which is, fairly funny. It's nothing crazy, but it's fairly funny. Just physically, the fact that once you beat him, you find out that it's just this little green guy piloting a mech suit who's hunting these bigger, crazier things, and he's got this awesomely huge ego. That's cool. That's funny. I like that. It's good. It's good stuff. I just wish we saw him less. Because every single time we see him, he just becomes less and less and less of a threat. At the end of it, I think him and Danny are just kind of dudes, They're just buds. They're hanging out, grilling. Like, I don't know. Skulker deserved better, but he also deserved less. So, for design, we're going to give him 7 out of 10, because he looks good, and he's got some, pretty funny aspects to his personality that, No, not his personality. We're talking about design. He's got funny aspects to his design. For relevance, we're going to give him a 3. And I know, being that he was a credible threat at the beginning of the show, to the point that by the end of it, you just see him everywhere, every day, down the street, at the Piggly Wiggly. It's mind-numbing. And eventually you stop thinking about Skulker. For personality, this might be a controversial one, but we're going to give him an 8, because his personality allows for a lot of use out of this character. It allows for him to take part in multitudes of villainous activities without... I burped. At any point in the show, you could put Skulker in a situation, and I guarantee you, even if you didn't give a reason for it, people are going to create one in their heads. because it's easy to. It's just like, oh, he's there hunting something. That's it. That's all you need. That's an 18 out of a possible 30. I don't think Spectra gets enough love. Or hate. Spectra's an interesting character because almost the entire first time we see her, she is in a human form. She looks and acts and presents as a human woman. She has, hair, she has crazy hair, but that's really the only thing that stands out. But as you progress into that episode and you discover that she is feeding on the misery of the students, and her plot is to kill Danny's sister, to off her, and to make the school very sad that she's dead, and to feed on that, which then feeds her youth, that's some dark stuff, and I think we've all had, at least one counselor like that. That, unfortunately, is where the compliments for Spectra end. Spectra doesn't stand out in any other regard. Again, she looks kind of just like a person, and even when she's evil, she's just like, I'm a generic monster. I wouldn't look twice at it in the background. She gets an upgraded form a little later in another season, but she's just, wearing, hot pants, or hot boots, leather, she's just... It's like dominatrix Spectra, which may be your thing, and it may be my thing, but objectively, it's neither of our things. It is also worth noting that Spectra's personality, along with a lot of the other ghosts over the course of the show, becomes less vindictive and less evil and less just mean. For design, we're going to give her a 3! We're going to give her a 3 on design, because she doesn't really stand out other than her hair, even whenever she is in any other form. She just kind of looks like a mean lady, and she just also happens to turn into a black shadow snake with red eyes. But it's not a very creative ghost design, though. Come on, do something better. For relevance, we're gonna give her a 6, actually, because her first 2 outings are very, very strong. She is a genuinely credible threat, and the only reason she doesn't get a higher score here is because almost everything she does is based in subterfuge, based in her not directly confronting Danny, meaning rarely does Danny struggle fighting her, except for maybe, a minute in the second fight. Of course, Season 3, outside of the girls' night, she doesn't really do much of anything, but Season 3 is a whole bag of problems anyway. And for personality, we're going to give her an 8. I say this because almost everything about Spectra is balled up and bundled up in her personality. That is who she is, much like all of us, really. But that is who her character is. It is not her design. It is not her power set. It is not her, threat to the world. It is her personality. 17 out of a possible 30. Oh, it's Technus! Oh, I love Technus. Oh, something about the Gilbert Gottfried voice gets me 100% of the time. And I'm so spitty today. Ugh. Technus is good. Technus is a rock solid ghost, with a caveat, though. His design, starting out with the good things, is simple. At first, his design is just like a crazy old man who also happens to be a ghost. But as the series progresses, Technus very rapidly, starts to accumulate technology and gear and stuff that he is implementing into his body. Eventually, he even goes as far as to go into, the virtual realm and digitize himself, I think. Talk about the ghost in the machine, am I right? But Technus' design evolves over the course of the series, which is something that not many other characters do. Spectra did, but her design was boring. That Gilbert Gottfried voice, too, though, it is funny on its own, but funny voice does not make a personality. But being this kind of crazy old man shouting your name at the top of your lungs, it feels like Technus should be confused about technology. And sort of that juxtaposition between his actual personality versus what he can do as a ghost is kind of funny to me. It makes me think he was like a deranged old man who was mad at technology and how quickly the world was changing, and he was so angry that when he died, he began to inhabit the technology. Again, all headcanon as far as I know. If I'm right, pay me $5, somebody. I'll be a writer for Danny Phantom, that show that no longer airs and probably never will. Relevance is a 5, though. Technus is never never the star of the show. He has a couple of episodes, and he's a pretty big deal in those episodes, but he falls into joke character category for most people almost every single time. And I get why he talks like a joke, he acts like a joke. He's pretty easily defeated most of the time, despite his various upgrades. It's just like, he doesn't do anything when he shows up. He's just Technus. And that's enough for me. But to be relevant, I don't know. Design, 10 out of 10. And the reason for that isn't necessarily just the design, but rather the evolution of it. The way that it has changed from Season 1, and how it changes over the course of the show and throughout various episodes. Relevance, 5 out of 10, because he's there, and you know it. They'll never mention Technus outside of the episodes where Technus is there. Personality's a 10, though. You can disregard this one if you absolutely have to, because I understand why this should not be the case, or why it wouldn't be the case, rather, for people besides myself. And I genuinely believe that if you were to go back and sit down and rewatch Danny Phantom right now, and you were to watch the Technus episodes, you'd be surprised at how good he is. That gives him a 25 out of a possible 30. Yeah, that's a lunch lady, alright. Show is. The lunch lady ghost is the first ghost we're introduced to as a villain in Danny Phantom, and she reflects that. She serves as a ghost that is an introduction to the concept of evil ghosts and what they are capable of. Her power is controlling lunch meat. Lunch meat, specifically, not vegetables. She hates vegetables. She hates vegetarians, really, but, like, you know, if she hates vegetarians, she hates vegetables, most likely. A couple of vegetables are probably fine, but not, like, don't... But her power set is, I think, genuinely just controlling lunch meat and the normal ghost abilities. She can control lunch meat like mad, like crazy good. But why? Why is that a thing you can do? Why is that? Why you're... Stop. Just stop doing that. Lunch Lady Ghost is there to show off Danny. She is there for Danny to triumph over at the end of the first episode, just like every other villain here. But she's definitely the one where it shows off the most. There's very little substance in her, even in her later appearances. She has snippets of personality that come out here and there. Moments where you find, like, oh, there's kind of a nice lady under there. That's cool. I like that. And then she's just an angry ghost for the rest of her appearance. Alright, so for design, Lunch Lady Ghost gets a 2. Same as Box Ghost. If I put her in a lineup and actually had her compared to other iconic cartoon characters or even villains from this same show, at no point would I go, Lunch Lady Ghost, I know her. She's my fave. Look at her. She's so cool. For relevance, we're going to give her a 1. 1! Because, she's just there, man. I can't think of anything significant that she's done until, like, the alternate future. And honestly, I'm going to go ahead and say this. Now that I'm sitting here and thinking about it, I didn't do as much looking up on the Lunch Lady Ghost specifically as I did on basically every other ghost. And I only even remembered she existed right before I started to record this video. So I could be a little misinformed, uninformed, and if I am, I do apologize. However, we're sticking with the 1. And for personality, we're gonna give her a 4. That's just because she's kind of a nice lady. I like that. That's cute. It's fun. Gives her a total of a 10 out of a possible 30. Oh, it feels so good deleting. Oh. Ember Malone is probably the most well-known outside of maybe the Box Ghost, honestly. Ember is known for a particularly controversial one in which a YouTuber obsessed over her, and I'm not going to go into the details of that, but just know that there was a lot that happened based on that. I say that to say, Ember's a character who has literally had a cult following. She looks good, her personality is consistent, she's almost always relevant when she does show up. But there are issues that I take with all aspects of Ember. Let's look at the positives on each first. For her design, you can look at Ember and know that that's Ember, because she looks really good. She looks really iconic. She stands out. You have the blue fiery hair, the pale skin, the like goth rocker makeup, and the spikes guitar. She looks awesome. She looks like a person, though. She looks like Sarah just put on an outfit and came to Ghost Day at work. So, for design, we're going to give her an 8 out of a possible 10. When she gets angry and, the fire's doing her thing, that's something else. But just standing there, yeah, like, I could do an Ember cosplay. It would look weird, but I could do it. Really, at the end of the day, she's just a lady. And that's good, that's great. I like ladies, I like women. But we need a little more than that. Come on, this is Danny Phantom. For relevance, we're also going to give her an 8. She's good, she's solid, she's a good pick. That's all I got on that one. I can't really say that in any other way. I'm going to keep repeating myself if I do. Personality's a 9! I only don't give her a 10 because I can't really tell you much about her other than she loves music and she's punk rock. Granted, I know some people that are like that. I know some people that have 2 personality traits. I'm probably one of those people. But I want to be able to know more about you than that. And I would be completely remiss if I didn't talk about her backstory as well, in personality. She's one of the few ghosts that has a very, very, extensive backstory because it's in her song, which is even cooler. That's great. I love that. It's good. It's 9. It's 9. She's a 25 out of a possible 30, up there with Technus. I think Walker is not good. He's not bad, but he's not good. Walker is introduced as this warden of a jail. In the ghost zone, specifically. Also, side note, why is everything like a zone when you're a kid? Like, you got the chalk zone, you got the ghost zone, you got the play zone, Zone must just be a good kid word. Walker is the warden of a ghost prison. And Danny runs into him basically on accident, and Danny is breaking ghost law by doing something, and then he breaks it again by doing something else. Walker is not an antagonist, really. He's there to keep the peace. And he's just trying to enforce these laws that Danny never really bothers to learn. That's a neat concept, especially if there was more of a society within the ghost zone. But there's not. Even still, Walker isn't really a standout character on his own. He's very no-nonsense, very cut and dry, and honestly, he's a pretty neutral character. He doesn't really take sides. And that is not to his benefit. Walker is not a threat, and he's not ever meant to be. He's meant to be an inconvenience. And that's kind of the problem with him. So, for design, we're gonna give him a 6 out of a possible 10. And I like this score for Walker specifically because I can actually identify Walker pretty easily despite him not being one of those ghosts that shows up a lot. Walker's got a pretty sleek design. It is a little simplistic. He is still just kind of a guy, but it's good. It's good. I like it. His relevance is a 5 because he's an inconvenience. He's never always the bridesmaid, never the bride. That's kind of Walker's scenario here. And then for personality, we're going to give him a good 5. He's a good 5. I like that. I like that form. I assume he has OCD because of, his suit and everything, but his fear of wolf is really what gives him that 5. If he remained how he was while he was first introduced, he wouldn't be even at a 5. He'd probably be at a 3. But him being terrified of Wolf as a consequence of running into him over the course of the story of the show, that's good. It's character growth. I like that. I can appreciate that. That gives him a 16 out of a possible 30. I want so badly to like Prince Aragon. I'm going to say Aragon. I think it's pronounced differently in the show. But Prince Aragon, let's talk about the bad first. Everything other than his appearance. He's evil. He don't want his sister having fun. He wants to marry Sam. He's evil. I want to say he has no personality, but he does have a personality. It's just bad. He's greedy and mean and just nasty. for the sake of none of it. Like, there's no point to any of it. He just is these things. And I understand that certain ghosts become more and more evil as they progress. Like, that's part of the ghost process, I think. I may be confusing that with supernatural. But either way, I want more than, ooh, I'm a sourpuss. Ooh. And he's not a character that recurs, either. I wish he was. I really do, because he's got a really cool power set that we're going to get into in a second. But he doesn't have agency outside of his castle, and he never leaves his castle. He only technically accidentally left his castle the one time that we actually have issues. And I don't even, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think he left the castle. I think we had to go into the castle. He's a homebody. So he just wants to be left alone. Design is a 10 out of 10. And do you know why? Yes, you do. It is the dragon. He turns into a dragon. I don't know how becoming a ghost allows you to turn into a fucking dragon, but here we are. Even if it wasn't for the dragon, he's got a very striking, very sinister appearance. And if he had more of a personality, I could actually see him as a legitimate, like, fantasy threat. You put him in another, like, setting and make him, like, put him in Baldur's Gate, like Baldur's Gate 3, swap him out with Gortash. Call that a day. This is gonna alienate some people, I think. Design, 10 out of 10, because he's a dragon and he looks good otherwise. Relevance, though, is a 3! He doesn't leave his house. He likes to sit on his butt. And you know, same. Like hard same. It's great. It's wonderful, but that means you're not relevant to the story. And for personality, we're gonna give him a 4, because he has a personality. He does. It's just gross. That gives him a 17 out of a possible 30. We're not going to talk about the one we were going to talk about, because I want to talk about a different one. That's Desiree. Her power set, first and foremost, is what defines her as a character and what defines her as a villain. Her ability to grant wishes, seemingly with an unlimited amount of power behind these wishes, is really good. And the fact that she ties herself into it with a genie trope, both in the way that she will take those wishes and change them to better suit her own potential needs, as well as her design, it's good. Desiree's solid. I do think she's not great, though. She has a couple of glaring flaws. For one, her backstory is a little silly. She was the concubine of, I think, a sultan. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. I think it was a sultan, though. Hopefully I'm not being accidentally racist with that. But she was the concubine of a sultan. And his wife got mad and kicked him out of the house. Or, not him. He kicked her out. The Sultan's wife kicked Desiree out of the house and forced her to kind of do her own thing. She hates men because of that, which I can still respect. Now that I'm thinking about it. Like, the Sultan didn't stand up for her, and the Sultan didn't really do what, you know, in Desiree's shoes, I feel like he should have done to protect me, if he really were to have cared about me. But, I don't know if that should translate to just, like, not liking or not trusting men. It was the wife's direct fault. I don't really know if I get that. Plus, also, in her backstory, it states that she died of a broken heart and old age. So she just lived a normal life afterwards. Like, she left the Sultan's care and just, like, lived a regular, everyday life for, like, what, 40 years? 50 years? How long did you live? And then she came back as, like, herself, probably granted her own wish to look like her youth, and just started fucking with people. And every time Desiree's on screen, she makes it's a pretty big deal. Her weakness is very clear-cut, so it's usually pretty abusable, but she has ways to get around it. If she can prevent Danny or the others from wishing, she can pretty much grant any wish for the villains or for just random people that show up for the sake of the episode. One of her main plots, it focuses on like a wishing star that everybody at Amityville Park are going to, you know, wish on, and she's going to get power from these wishes because she generates power from wishes. I'm dumping a lot of information on you. The point is Desiree is good, but I got issues with what's going on in her noggin specifically. For design, 8 out of 10. She's good. She's solid. 8 apparently translates to solid, because that's the second word of the day. Relevance is a 9, because every time we see Desiree, she is the star of the show. But for personality, we're gonna give her a 5 for just being kind of like needlessly vindictive. Just let it go, man. That's a 22 out of a possible 30. Now for our very, very first non-ghost villain of Danny Phantom, and that is the Guys in White. The Guys in White are a parody of the Men in Black, and that is it. They are a silly, fun parody of the Men in Black who hunt ghosts instead of aliens. They are not really meant to be taken as their own thing. The Guys in White are always tools of others. They are always used by other individuals to kind of get revenge on Danny, or to cause disruptions to other ghosts. They show up basically on accident for most of the time, except for whenever they're very briefly hunting Daniel. I called him Daniel. When they're hunting Dan. But that's even... It's not really like it's a major threat. We know that they're just dudes, right? Like, they can interfere with Dan's personal life through all of their investigative abilities. But they're so silly and campy, you know they're not going to be a real threat. But they are funny, you know? Like, I'll give them that. They got the jokes. They'll show up, they'll do their bit, and then they go. They go about their business. That's it. There's nothing wrong with it. They know their place. They are side characters at best. I can't even tell you any of the individual members of the Guys in White's name. And if they did have one, it would probably be K and J, just like Men in Black. Or it would be L and M. Something. So for design, we're going to give them a 5 because they are Guys in White. That's what it says on the tin. Relevance? It's a 2 because, just, it's not. Personality is a 6. That's a total of 13 out of a possible 30. Speaking of what it says on the tin, here's Sidney Poindexter. Sidney's a nerd. That's 100% of his personality. You can really look at Sidney and just know that he was bullied, and as a ghost, he probably is trying to get revenge on other people, on bullies specifically. And yeah, in his first outing, he's actually a pretty interesting villain because Dan has to reason with him. He has to actually talk to Sidney and get him to understand that Dan isn't a bully. He is bullied more often than not. And that's an interesting concept. Danny's personality is pretty headstrong and pretty blunt force trauma. He hits things and asks questions later most of the time. So him having to actually try to communicate with this guy is a nice change of pace for the characters. It just doesn't pan out how it should have, but whatever. I appreciate the attempt. But Sidney is a ghost and an antagonist that you can genuinely feel sorry for. You know why he's doing what he's doing. You know what he's doing and how he's doing it. You know these things, and you're still just like, maybe he's got a point. He's a little confused, but he's got the spirit. Design's a 3, because he's just a nerd. I take offense to that. That's what I look like in the mirror. Relevance is a 4, because after his first showing, God, I'm spitting so much! Relevance is a 4. And that is specifically because outside of his first showing, Sidney isn't even an antagonist. He's an antagonist due to a misunderstanding. He's an antagonist because he's intentionally antagonistic toward Dan, but he works with him later on in the show, and pretty consistently afterwards. Meaning he's not as relevant as an actual threat, but he's still a decently relevant character, so we're gonna give him a 4, even though he is kind of relegated to background status by the time we get to Season 3. 9 for personality, because you can sympathize with him, and any sympathetic villain is a good villain. Not true, that's a very broad statement, but most of the time it's true. That brings his total to 16 out of a possible 30. Vlad Plasmius, or Vlad Masters if you're nasty, is a really, really good villain. And I think I'm saying nothing shocking. Vlad is probably the villain that recurs the most in Danny Phantom. He has history with the Fentons. He has history with Jack, specifically, Jack and Maddie, and is a very Severus Snape kind of character where he loved Maddie before Jack, but Jack got her anyway. Unlike Severus Snape, Vlad is evil. He is evil. But he's a different breed of evil than a lot of the other villains over the course of Danny Phantom. He is conniving while also being powerful. He is manipulative because he has goals outside of destroying Danny. Because he wants Danny's mama. He wants that MILF, and he will do anything to get it. He doesn't succeed. I think temporarily he does occasionally, but he doesn't really succeed. More, he's actually the same as Danny, too. That's an interesting little tidbit that's thrown out in the first episode that we see from him, is that he's a half ghost as well. And when you actually start picking apart Vlad's design, both as a ghost and as a human, he actually is pretty much the exact opposite of both Dan and of Jack. Jack is way taller than Vlad is. Vlad is way skinnier than Jack is. Where Jack still has black hair, Vlad has white hair. That's long compared to Jack's short hair. But then you look at the ghost sides, and now Vlad is the opposite of Dan. Dan is in the all-black suit with the white highlights. Vlad is in the all-white suit with the black highlights. You can see why I say what I say. My only real question is why Vlad has the pallid skin complexion, the blue skin. Dan doesn't ever experience that or show that I'm aware of. But maybe it's a side effect of just having the ghost powers for a longer period of time, is that your ghost form becomes more ghostly. And yes, Vlad is a character who does actually team up with Danny a couple of times throughout the show, but it's always for his own benefit. He is very consistently good at protecting his own ass. And that's really his goal. He gets into trouble and has to come to somebody else for help. A very low-key kind of character, you know? Not low-key, but low-key. I know, nobody needed the clarification, but I gave it anyway. So, for design, we're gonna give him a 7 out of a possible 10. I want to give him more, but if I'm gonna knock people down for just being guys, he's a guy, actually. I do appreciate the alternate, appearance compared to him and Dan and Jack, but Vlad is still a dude. And that's it, yeah. 7's the highest I can give him. For relevance, though, it's a 10. I mean, what else could it be? He is the most relevant of all of Danny's villains, because he is the one who produces more than half of Danny's problems once Vlad's introduced. And for personality, we're going to give him an 8. I only don't give him more than an 8 because throughout Danny Phantom, and especially in the later seasons, Vlad seems to lose a bit of his conniving streak, a little bit of his evilness seems to go to the wayside. He starts behaving a little stupider, too, just doing dumber things and getting caught out more than he would in the earlier seasons. And you could chalk that up to desperation, but I chalk it up to not great writing. But that still gives him a 25 out of a possible 30. Freakshow is not a ghost, but he has a lot of ghosts. Freakshow runs a circus where he is the master of all things magical, mythical, mystical, and more, where he brings ghosts into the real world to show you how cool he is. Very insecure, deeply insecure, to the point where he is jealous and angry and hateful of all ghosts, even though his family has the ability to control them and always have. He's inherited a slew, a cavalcade, a menagerie, if you will, a menagerie of mystical artifacts that can control or otherwise harm, bother, fuck with ghosts. And that's neat. Like, he's one of the very few characters in Danny Phantom who references the occult side of things. He represents almost the entirety of occult mention throughout Danny Phantom. It's good. I wish there was more of it. It's very much like a circus of the disquieting, you know? It feels cursed in a way that isn't like a meme. And also in both of his outings, both of his primary outings at least, dropping my script. Early on, he's just kind of doing, like, stuff. Second outing, though, he almost completely unravels everything that has ever happened or been a secret in the entire show. That's a wild level of threat for Freakshow. Like, you could have told me almost any other villain was going to be that level of threat, and I would have believed you sooner than I would have believed Freakshow did it. But they pulled it off. They did it. They made it a thing, and he looked dapper doing it. Look at that. Look at that man. He His design is kind of bland, though, right? Like, it's fine. It's good. He has costume changes. He's definitely iconic. He's got cool gear with him, but he is just like a pale, pasty-faced loser like myself. And I don't know if I appreciate that. He looks like the Buzzard from Looney Tunes. I don't know if anyone's gonna get that reference, but there's the Buzzard. Like, just apples to apples, these guys. So for design on Freakshow, I'm feeling a good solid like 8. We have to take into account the entire circus, and the circus is cool. Like, I do admittedly have a soft spot for evil carnivals. That's a weirdly specific one, but they happened a lot in like Goosebumps, and I fucks with Goosebumps, so I like this. So design gets a good 8. For relevance, he gets a 6 out of a possible 10. No. For relevance, we're going to give him a 7 out of 10. I give him a 7 because in his first outing, I could not tell you what he was trying to do. I think he was trying to steal a ghost artifact of some kind, but whatever that is, it escapes me. The second time, though, more than makes up for the first time and gets him over the good mark, at least. But personality's a 5, dude. Like, he's just a bitter little man. And I don't like how that makes me feel personally. So that's a 20 out of a possible 30. So I'm lumping together Johnny 13 and Kitty because we almost never see them apart. Even in their first outing, they're together. It is their episode. They are a couple who probably died on a motorcycle. And so they stay together. I have nothing else positive to say. That's not true. They're good. Well, their design is just kind of that of people. I think they're implied to be in their early 20s, maybe. And Kitty definitely has the better design. But they are still both just people. The cool shadow demon's aight. Like, Johnny's just like, go, shadow. And then it causes bad luck, which is how he gets his name, Johnny 13. That's good. That's fine. That's more of that, please. But Johnny and Kitty themselves, not very stand out. They also don't really do much, you know? They're fine villains for when they're there. Like, Johnny in particular is usually like, they're fighting, they're arguing something, Kitty's doing her own thing, and Johnny shows back up, he's just like, baby, take me back, I'll kill these people, and she's just like, no you won't, and he does it anyway. But it's every time with these guys, like, come on! They do got their personalities in check, though. Like, I can't say that they have a bad personality. Neither of them do. In fact, I firmly believe them as like an aggressive early 20s couple. I know people that act exactly like them. I think I have acted exactly like them, personally. But that doesn't make it good. It makes it kind of annoying, especially in a kid's show. I say kids like I'm not a 29-year-old fucking man watching this shit and talking about it. Kitty going on the girls' night at the end of season 3. I can appreciate Kitty being on there because she just wants to get away from Johnny. So design, they get a 4 for being people and boring people at that. For relevance, they get a 4 for being the same thing every single time they're on screen. They are consistent, but they are not a threat. And personality's a 7 out of a possible 10. That brings their total up to 15 out of a possible 30. I wanted to give them a 13 out of 30, but I just couldn't justify it. Valerie is a weird one to talk about because she doesn't start out as a villain. She starts out as just one of the popular kids at Amityville Park school place. And because of story events that take place throughout seasons 1 and I think she doesn't have her villain reveal until season 2. But because of events that happen throughout the story, she becomes a threat to Danny. And it forces him to actually look and pay attention to a different aspect of his life he's been kind of neglecting. And that's what grounds a character. So Valerie is phenomenal for grounding Dan back into the real world, so to speak. She does the whole thing where she's a bad guy, then she's a worse guy when she finds out who Dan actually is. She gets really mad about it, but then she comes around to being on the good side. What? Here's my co-host. Hello, chicken. But really, the thing that her personality does leave something to be desired, though. I like it. Don't get me wrong. Don't mistake that in any way, shape, or form. But she's smart. She's athletic. She is popular. She's a ghost hunter. I just don't like that she's rubbing it in my face, I guess. I've got a tiny little ego. For design, she gets a 5. She gets a 5 because even though she's just a person, when she's out doing her ghost fighting shenaniganery, she's on that, like, flying machine thing, and she's, like, throwing grenades, and, like, she's going nuts. Like, she's doing work. And so I can appreciate that. She was cooler looking herself. She'd get more than a 5. Relevance is an 8, though. And that's because she makes Dan fight that other part of his life and continue the veil of secrecy over the course of Danny Phantom. It makes things harder for him, and again makes him use parts of his actual self that he wouldn't otherwise, similar to Sydney. And for personality, we're going to give her a 6 out of 10. It's good, she's very well-rounded, maybe a little, or a lot, too well-rounded. Being too well-rounded means you don't stand out in any regard. So 6 feels good. That gives her a 19 out of a possible 20. I didn't expect to like Youngblood as much as I do. You know, going back into it as an adult, I thought Youngblood was, like, just the pirate. He was just the pirate form. He didn't do anything else. But no, he's a kid playing dress-up, and his powers, or the plot surrounding that, references that. And that is the point. He's a cowboy at one point, I think, and then he becomes an astronaut, because he's playing games. Like, he is just a kid. And he does that well. He does it really well, as a matter of fact. I have no issues really believing anything that Youngblood does throughout the show, because he is doing what a kid would do. He doesn't like adults, he doesn't like bedtime, and then he has, like, his little companion who, like, shapeshifts to fit whatever thing he's playing. And that's a neat little touch. That makes me think, like, maybe it's a parent or something like that who also died with him, which is depressing, but you know, at least he's not alone. But he is not a threat. In his outing with Ember, where he's a pirate, yeah, he does take all of the adults and force them to, like, run on a treadmill. But he doesn't ever want to kill people. He doesn't ever want to hurt people, really. He just wants to do kid shit. Every other time he shows up, he's just a nuisance. He's not a real issue. He's just a kid causing mischief. And it just comes off kind of as annoying, especially when compared to some of the other villains. Simultaneously, though, that means that he's got oodles and boodles of fun moments of just him being himself and being whatever character he wants. Chicken, what is it? What doth thou desire, child? So for design, we're gonna give him a 6 out of 10, and that's because he changes the design based on the game he's playing. I like that. It's a good touch, and it allows for that, you know, childlike sense to come out and show through in the way he looks. But for relevance, though, that's going to be a 3. And it's only because he just isn't there to be malicious. He doesn't care about the spotlight. He doesn't care about the limelight. He doesn't care about the ramifications of his acts. He is simply there to be himself, which is why personality also gets a 10 out of possible 10, meaning he gets a 19 out of 20. Fright Knight's bad. I'm just going to say it at the top. He looks cool. I like that. He speaks in rhyme because his name rhymes, I assume. Nothing else about him matters. Fright Knight is the definition of a jobber. Fright Knight is what Skulker eventually became, but it happened overnight, over Fright Knight. Because initially, when Fright Knight is introduced, he is the spirit of Halloween. And that's cool-ish. If they had expanded on that, it might be a little better. But that's also why his name is Fright Knight, because it is the Night of Frights. Afterwards, it's revealed that he's like the servant of Pariah Dark, and then then he's working for Vlad Plasmius a little later after that. Like, he doesn't really have a thing that is his thing to be concrete about. And he's never the star. He's never the guy who shows up and he's just like,
I'm doing it because I'm Fright Knight.
Except in that first episode where he is the spirit of Halloween, which I think he just lied. I don't think he was the spirit of Halloween. I think he just wanted an excuse to put on the armor and speak in rhyme for a little while. So we're gonna kind of fly past Fright Knight because I'm bored. I'm bored of Fright Knight. Design gets a 6. Relevance gets a 2 because he had one good outing on his own. You know what? We'll give it a 3. We'll give his relevance a 3 because he had that one good night. Personality's a 3 though. That brings his total up to a 12 out of possible 13. 13 out of a possible 30. And since we're talking about Fright Knight, got to talk about his boss, Pariah Dark, the king of all ghosts, and one of the most disappointing ghosts in the show. Pariah Dark has nothing about him that I can recall that matters. He's never hinted to before his episode. He's never alluded to. Nobody's ever just like, oh, well, the king will come back and you'll die, Danny. Daniel Phantom, you will be killed. Nobody does that. And yet he still somehow is the king of all ghosts and is insanely powerful and has like the Infinity Gauntlet. A lot of stuff, a lot of power-ups that all translate to nothing. He is a one-episode villain who I almost lumped together with a bundle of other one-episode villains over here that are coming up, this nebulous bundle over here. But I didn't because he's worse than them. He's meant to be the king. He's meant to be the man, the guy, the powerhouse of the ghost realm. And I don't believe it for a second. I don't know. Pariah is just disappointing, which is why I've got him ranked as low as I do. His designs of 5, like a 5-year-old wanted to make a cool, evil-looking king, and somebody with professional art skills, debatably, ended up like taking that design and running with it. It serves the purpose. He does kind of look like an evil ghost king. I say kind of, because he just kind of looks like an action figure. Relevance, we're going to give a 3, because I can't imagine him ever being relevant again outside of his first episode. They do talk about him, and his artifacts continue to show up. So maybe we'll give him a 4 for the reoccurrence of his artifacts and of his name, but even that feels a little yucky. We're still going to do it, though. That's a 4 on relevance. Personality's a 3 for the exact same reason that Prince Aragon is also a 3 in personality. Now that I've mentioned that, are they related? Sure, maybe. There's a 12 out of possible 30. Dark Danny is the most credible threat that Dan faces over the course of Danny Phantom. Dark Danny is the complete emulsification of everything that has happened to Dan over the course of the show. It is all of the problems with Vlad that he has, all the problems with himself, all the problems that he has with his family, with his future, with everything all coalesced into one individual who's an asshole. And he looks good, too. Like, dude looks rad. Like, I could look at him and actually genuinely think, okay, well, that's a villain. But Dark Danny is probably the most powerful enemy that Dan has faced throughout the course of the show. And it really tells. It's very telling that this is the case above even Pariah Dark. But his ghostly wail is a power that's introduced because of this show. Like, Dan gets this ability afterwards. My main issues with Dark Danny are actually almost entirely in his personality. Because he's meant to be a mixture of Dan and of Vlad Masters, or Vlad Plasmius specifically. He's meant to be the ghost halves of both of them combined. That made Dark Dan somehow? I don't know how. Because neither Vlad nor Dan are that evil. So I don't understand how he became so generically evil. I understand how he's so conniving, how he's so backstabbing. I understand that he had a life of loss up until this point, but depression doesn't make you evil either. So I don't really get it. He really does feel like the last boss, and considering he was in the last TV special, the last movie before the end of the show, can't really top that. So for design, we're going to give him a 9 out of a possible 10, because it's good, it's solid, it's excellent, and it's only not a 10 because his face is kind of weird. Like it's a little weird. Relevance is a 9 as well, for the reasons I talked about a little earlier. But personality, we're going to have to give a 5. I just don't see the evil. I don't understand the evil. I don't understand. With the backstory given, it conflicts with who he is at this point. It just doesn't jive with me, you know? It gives him a 23 out of a possible 30. But lastly, we have Vortex, Nocturne, and Undergrowth, and they are all kind of the same thing, so I lumped them into one. They are manifestations of non-human things that have died, or that do die, or are dreams, and that they now appear in the Ghost Zone as these, like, primordial chaos beings or something. they're just monsters. They are just things for Dan to fight that are increasingly powerful. By the end of the show, he's fought things that could probably, that can tear holes in dimensions and do all kinds of crazy things like that. He needed something to, test his metal against and to test his weird powers on. But they aren't characters, you know? No one's favorite character in Danny Phantom is Vortex. No one's favorite character is Undergrowth. No one cares about Nocturne. Their designs are 6s, their relevances are 5s, and their personalities are 3s. Designed because they're meant to look cool, and they do, but they have no substance. Relevance because they exist for their one episode, and then no one cares ever again. And if you can't tell, the end of the day is hitting me, and I'm getting tired. So let's wrap this up. Alright, so without further ado, this is the entire list from top to bottom. I do believe, if my math is correct, that both Vlad, Plasmius, and Technus are at the top. I'm going to put Technus as number 1 because we need to give him a win, and that seems to be my thing. And I mean, he's Technus. Come on, he is Technus. I think Ember's also up there too. I think Ember's also in that top 3. I think there's a 3-way tie, but Technus is number 1 because I said he is, and I'm making the list. Oh, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it tremendously. It means a lot to have anybody watching anything that I put out. Especially because I do actually try to put a lot of work into my videos. I want to be able to do more, too. I want to be able to research more and make more compelling content and better edited and better all that. I want to improve. And that's going to be my goal for next year, I think. I'm going to continue to try to improve for this year. But I think I can see some, betterment, you know? Subscribe, stick around, say hey every once in a while. And if you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments down below. But thank you again so much for watching, and y'all have a great rest of your night.